Welcome to For Better or For Court, Family Law in New Jersey.
Welcome back to For Better or For Court, Family Law in New Jersey with Ms. Alix Claps. Alix is a partner at Heyman & Fletcher and a certified matrimonial law attorney who helps New Jersey families navigate divorce, custody, and complex family matters with clarity and care. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about parenting plans. Alix will explain what makes them work, where they often go wrong, and how to build a co-parenting structure that actually holds up in real life. This is parenting plans that actually work, avoiding common co-parenting conflicts. Miss Alix, welcome back, my dear.
Hi, Evan. How are you?
Hello. Miss Alix, when parents first come to you, what's their biggest misconception about what a parenting plan really is?
A lot of people come in and say, well, what's the default parenting plan? There is no such thing. There is no presumption of 50-50 time sharing. There's no presumption of one parent having, all the weekdays and then the parents alternate weekends. No such thing. We're looking at what's in the best interest of your children, and there are a lot of factors that go into that, so there can't be a default anything.
How do you help parents shift from thinking in terms of winning custody and to think about long-term cooperation?
Again, there are two components of custody. There's legal custody and there's residential custody or physical custody. So I always have a conversation with my clients about it is highly unlikely, unless there are some extreme circumstances, that one parent will get sole legal custody. So let's table that unless we have some of those extreme circumstances. Let's look at what makes sense for your kids. How far apart are you and your spouse going to live? If do you have a plan? Do you know where the other one's going to live? Where are your children in school if they're of school age? Because that's going to give a lot of information about where they should be spending their weekdays. How old are they? A child at the age of 5 has very different needs than a child at the age of 10 or 15, or children who are not technically emancipated. We often don't do parenting plans for college students, let's say, but there might be a discussion that needs to be had about how are we dividing up responsibilities for this not yet emancipated older child.
What are some common points that tend to cause conflict after a plan is signed? Things couples wish they had thought of earlier before they've signed?
You can't foresee everything. So while, I have a pretty long list of questions that I ask, sometimes people aren't prepared to make those decisions, or they'll have so much confidence in their ability to work it out that they don't want to make decisions, or they make decisions, in year 2020 and something changes in year 2027 that nobody foresaw. And then we've got to figure out how to deal with it. Somebody gets a new job offer. Somebody gets remarried. A child has a situation where they're diagnosed with a learning disability and they need extra support. Or they join a travel soccer team and they've got 6 tournaments a year because they're a really gifted athlete. And now we're looking at that as a path towards a college scholarship. So we've got to change how we address things. There are good things happen and not so good things happen. And we've got to deal with that. And there's only so much you can foresee.
Every family looks different, of course. How flexible can a parenting plan be before it becomes too vague to enforce?
I think a lot of that has to do with the level of trust between the parents and the level of communication between the parents. And also, I think flexibility is sometimes better for the parents, but maybe not so good for the kids. So if the flexibility is working for you, but you're seeing that the child's starting to have some behavioral issues, or they're emotionally upset at too much back and forth or not enough back and forth, I got to stress, you're supposed to be acting in the best interest of your child, and that's not always in the best interest of the parents.
Have you had a case where small adjustments to a parenting plan made a big difference in reducing the conflict?
Yes. Sometimes that's an age progression issue as well. So maybe we're able to implement something now that the child's in elementary school that we couldn't do when they were smaller and needed more stuff to go back and forth. So putting the transitions through school, where an overnight ends at drop off at school and an overnight begins with pickup at school, rather than kid gets off the bus at mom's and then an hour and a half later we do a transition to dad. That's hard on everybody. And eliminating unnecessary steps can really help the kids develop in a good way. Also,
Mm.
you're a parent, you guys agree that you're going to have 50-50 time sharing, and you got little kids, you implement what's a 2-2-3 schedule. So week 1, mom's got Monday, Tuesday, dad's got Wednesday, Thursday, mom's got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the next week it's flipped. So dad's got Monday, Tuesday, mom's got Wednesday, Thursday, dad's got Friday, Saturday, Sunday. When the kids are young and you don't want them to go too long without seeing the other parent, that can work. As they get older, if the kid wants to take gymnastics lessons, and gymnastics is always on Tuesday night, but the one
Hmm.
parent doesn't really want to facilitate that, then maybe it makes sense to go to a 5-2-2-5. So mom always has Monday and Tuesday, dad always has Wednesday and Thursday, and
Wow.
then they alternate the weekends. So yeah, you may go 5 days instead of 3 days without seeing the other parent, but if the kid's 7, 8, 9, that's an appropriate schedule. That is not too long to see the parent. And that, with these days, you can play Roblox with your kids at night, or you can FaceTime with them. So a lot of ways to stay connected. Doesn't mean they have to be physically in your house.
Technology plays a big role now. What are your thoughts on co-parenting apps or written communication tools to kind of keep that communication going?
I think communicating, or at least confirming things in writing, is always helpful. You know, my memory is not what it used to be. So I like to have, I've got a shared calendar with my co-parent. We've got a calendar for each kid in their own color. We've got notations all over it. Both of us can change it. We can both see it. We've got a spreadsheet where we're constantly tracking kids' expenses. We're not using any of the apps. The apps are great if there has been a history, let's say, of disagreement as to what communication has happened. If one parent's accusing the other of never responding about things. So, I asked dad if he had an opinion about which orthodontist we go to for the child, and dad never responded. And dad says, no, I said we got to use that one, but there's no record of anything. Using an app like Our Family Wizard, or there are a couple others like that, where it tracks when the message was sent, from whom to whom, when it was first seen, when it was responded to, and it can't be manipulated by anybody. So it creates a better evidentiary record and helps, I hope, to prevent us having to go to court to actually fight about it.
How do parents handle unexpected changes? The job shifts, kids' extracurricular schedules, like you were talking about, without going back to court every single time.
So if parents can't figure those things out between themselves, this is a great opportunity to have a session with a mediator, to come in and say, here's what we agreed to 5 years ago. Here's what's changed. Here's what I think should happen. Here's what the other parent thinks should happen. Help us, and maybe the mediator speaks to the kids. Maybe you've got a professional, a social worker, or somebody who's involved with the kids who provides some input. But letting the judge make a decision eliminates some of the flexibility that I think, especially when you're talking about scheduling and issues with kids, that parents should maintain.
So, Ms. Alice, what about these new relationships? Parents start dating again. What boundaries or expectations should be built into that plan?
I'm going to say something a little controversial here. I know a
Oh,
lot of people build into their marital settlement agreements, neither parent shall introduce a new romantic partner to the kids until they've been in an exclusive relationship for at least 6 months. I think that builds so much pressure and puts so much pressure on everybody involved to make the introduction go well. Let's say mom's got a new boyfriend. They've been dating for 6 months. Mom and the boyfriend, they think they're going to get engaged, but he hasn't even met the kids yet. So
hmm
you're putting pressure on that relationship. You're putting pressure on the kid to expect them to really bond with this new person.
hmm
It's the 21st century. Moms have male friends, dads have female friends, dads have male friends, moms have male friends or female friends, whatever your particular combination of romantic relationship is, you also have platonic friends in that same field. So allow the kids to meet the new friend. Don't use the boyfriend or girlfriend word. Don't use
hmm
a scary relationship word. Let them meet them in a non-threatening, no pressure environment, just to get
Right.
a vibe. And then maybe you wait 6 months to tell them they're in an exclusive relationship or a significant relationship. But don't make the first introduction once this relationship is that far down the train tracks.
Mm, it makes sense. Some parents want to avoid rigid schedules altogether and play it by ear. Does that ever work, or does it usually lead to trouble?
I've seen it work, usually though for short amounts of time, in part because kids need more structure than that. It might work for the parents, but I find the kid needs some structure. And maybe it works best when they're really, really little and they don't have a school schedule and you're not worrying about who's got to do the homework and who's got to get the bus and who's packing the lunch. And the kid needs a routine. The same way the kid knows that they've got gym class on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they got to know what parents' house they're supposed to be going to, what are their expectations for things. So, and I think, having a regular sort of backdrop schedule makes sense where, mom's got Monday, Tuesday, dad's got Wednesday, Thursday. But if dad's got a meeting on a Wednesday and they need to swap a day, that sort of flexibility should always be there because it's, generally better for the kid to go to mom's house rather than, babysitters having to be found or things like that.
If tensions start rising again months after the divorce, what's the best first step for parents to de-escalate before it becomes a legal issue and they're going back to court and things get more contentious?
I think rope in a reasonable professional, whether that's mom and dad going to me, and I say mom and dad loosely. I mean, sometimes it's dad and dad and sometimes it's mom and mom, but the parents go to mediation, go without your attorneys, go for a single session, see if you work something out so you can communicate with the help of another person before you're just fighting and everybody's entrenched, or somebody says, well, I'm just going to unilaterally do something. That's where you really run into problems, where somebody doesn't respect the co-parenting relationship and makes unilateral decisions, whether it's before they get any input or after they've gotten pushback.
And finally, for families listening who are just starting to draft their plan, what's one often overlooked detail that can save a lot of stress down the road?
Don't get tied to the idea of, I need to be the parent of primary residence and I need that to mean I have all the weekdays, or I have to have a 60-40 because I will feel bad if it is 50-50. Don't get entrenched in the numbers. Look at a calendar. Look at what have your kids' lives looked like for the last 12 months. Start from your kids, not from you.
Oh, I actually do have another question before we wrap up. Is in New Jersey, is there any minimum age where a kid's voice is heard in court or considered in court?
There's not a strict kind of black line age. I find that generally 9, 10, 11 is where, if we're in a custody hearing or parenting time hearing, maybe the judge will do an in-camera interview, which means the parents don't know what the kid says. The judge and the court staff are there. Sometimes the attorneys are there. More often than that, attorneys are not even there. They submit questions in advance and the court will interview the child. As you get older, 15, 16, 17, that's when a court is more likely to not impose a schedule on the child at all. They're going to say, I'm not going to force you to wrestle a 15-year-old into a car for a parenting exchange that they don't want to do.
Right.
And then once they're 18, the court really doesn't have any jurisdiction about it. So you may be you may have a senior in high school. You may be a senior in high school. You may be 18. Court doesn't get to decide when you have time with either parent at that point.
Miss Alix, thank you.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you all for listening to For Better or For Court's Family Law in New Jersey. If you're navigating custody or co-parenting challenges, visit HeymanFletcherLaw.com to connect with Miss Alix. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, share this information with someone that might find this information helpful as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.